Hi, everyone. I'm back with a new story. And this is in honor of the theme of celebrating literacy and believe in yourself. And it's all about being resilient and perseverance. And the story that I have today is called Flight by Robert Burleigh. It is 1927, and his name is Charles Lindbergh. Later, they will call him the Lone Eagle. Later, they will call him the Lucky Lindy, but not now. Now it's May 20th, 1927, and he's standing in the still dark dawn. He watches rain drizzle down on the airfield, and on his small airplane, the airplane has a name painted on its side, and it's called the Spirit of St. Louis. And you see, that's his airplane. And this is Charles Lindbergh. Lindbergh is nearly as tall as the plane itself, and yet he's about to attempt what no other has done before, to fly without stop from New York to Paris, France, over 3,600 miles away across the Atlantic Ocean, all alone. So this is pretty amazing for the time period. Okay, this is the 1920s. He's going to be flying from New York to Paris, France, which is over 3,600 miles away across the Atlantic Ocean, and he's doing it all by himself. He climbs into the box-like cockpit that will be his only home for many hours. He clicks on the engine. He listens as the catches gurgles and roars. A few friends are here to say goodbye. They are only a few feet away, and yet to Lindbergh, how far off they seem. They look up at him and wave. Good luck. Keep safe. A telephone wire stretches across the far end of the field. To touch the wire will plunge the plane to the ground. There's an extra fuel tank in the front of the cockpit. Because of this, Lindbergh cannot see straight ahead. Will the Spirit of St. Louis, with its over 5,000 pounds, rise into the air? To keep the plane lighter, Lindbergh is leaving behind his radio and his parachute. Will that be enough? He has been up all night getting ready. A thought runs back and forth through his mind. It's still possible to turn back, to return home. And yet another thought is stronger. I've been waiting my entire life for this flight. Lindbergh lowers his goggles and nods his head. Go! The men on each side push to help the plane roll over the soggy ground. The little plane bumps forward, gaining speed. The wheels leave the ground and then touch back. The plane seems to hop, taking its last bow to earth. The third try, it stays aloft. It soars above the wire, but only 20 feet. The Spirit of St. Louis rises in the air. It's 7:52 in the morning, New York time. Lindbergh points his plane towards the Atlantic and beyond, towards Paris. And you know how far away it's going to be, how long it's going to take him? Over 30 hours he has to fly. Pretty, how do you think he's feeling right now? Yeah, maybe a little nervous, maybe excited, maybe scared, not knowing what's going to happen, maybe ready to go because this is like something he always wanted to do. So lots of different emotions are probably going through his head. He gazes down in the morning light, how far off Paris seems, across the long ocean. He plans to follow the coastline, flying northeast. The land's edge looks to him like green fingers pointing at the dark sea. To see ahead, Lindbergh pokes a small homemade periscope out to the side of the cockpit. Sometimes he flies very close to the water, just 10 feet above the waves. He knows that this low height, the plane glides more smoothly. The plane drones on. It cruises at about 100 miles per hour. At this rate, he'll have enough fuel to reach his destination, but only if he stays on course. Beside him in the cockpit is a little book. He keeps a diary as he goes, all day long, hour by hour. It's as if he were speaking to himself. He wants to remember everything because no one else will really know what it's like. At 12:08, he flies above Nova Scotia. Just after 4 o'clock, he flies above the coast of Newfoundland. At dusk, he looks down and he sees the icebergs. In his diary, he calls them white pyramids, white patches in a blackened sea. He wonders what lies ahead. So he's keeping a journal, a diary of everything that's happening because he's the only one that is experiencing this, so can know what happened. So he needs to keep a journal. The sun sets far beyond the plain. Lindbergh flies over St. John's, Newfoundland, the last point of land in North America. Now he can no longer follow the land's edge for direction. He must chart his course carefully. The slightest movement can send him miles off course. And what happens if he goes off course? Why is that a problem if he's not staying on course? Right, he only has enough fuel if he stays on course. If he doesn't stay on the course that he's supposed to take, he doesn't have enough fuel for the airplane. He follows two compasses and the stars to navigate. As long as the sky is clear, he is safe. He must stay awake. He writes, "Now I must cross not one, but two oceans, one of night and one of water." Time passes slowly. It's almost 9 o'clock at night. Remember, he started very early in the morning. Lindbergh's 13th hour in the air. He has completed 1/3 of the flight. He moves through dense, curling fog, lit ghostly white by the moon. He suddenly enters a huge storm cloud. The plane shimmers, moving up and down in the uniform blackness. He wonders, can I fly above it? Slowly, he soars to 10,500 feet. Here it's clear, but very, very cold. He extends his arm outside the cockpit and feels stinging pinpricks. He clicks on the small flashlight and peers out. Heavy ice has formed on the plane's wings. He cannot risk his instruments icing up. He points the Spirit of St. Louis back down. The wings quiver as they slice through the turbulent air. The fog continues, but now at least the air is warmer. The ice begins to melt and Lindbergh roars ahead through the fog and clouds to Paris, over 2,000 miles away. Can you imagine? He has to think about what he's doing, to concentrate, make sure he stays on course, make sure he navigates, make sure everything is going smoothly, make sure he has enough fuel. And he's all by himself. So he has to make sure he stays awake, and he could get lonely. And this is a big trip. And he's keeping his journal. There's so many things that are going on right now. Space and time and deep, deep darkness. It's on the other side of midnight, the loneliest hours. Lindbergh has been awake for almost 50 hours straight. Remember, he couldn't sleep before he left for the trip. Remember, he was up all night getting ready for the trip. So can you imagine being up all night getting ready for this trip? And then you're up, you have to fly this airplane. So this is pretty amazing. He is closer to Europe than America. Now there is no turning back, only moving forward. He dozes for a minute and then jerks awake. So he has to try to keep himself awake. So he hasn't slept, and it's lonely and there's nobody to talk to. One of the plane's wings is dipping crazily. In its sudden rush of fear, he grabs for the throttle. He gropes for the steady center with his heart pounding. As he feels the leveling wings, he lets out breath. He repeats over and over to himself, I must not sleep. I must not sleep. Here, high above the churning ocean, to sleep is to die, right? If he falls asleep, that's it. The plane's going to crash and he's going to die. So he has to stay awake. He has to persevere and stay awake. These are some of the things he does to stay awake. He leans his face near the open window to feel the cold air. He holds his eyelids up with his fingers to keep them from closing. You ever do that? Like if you're really tired and you hold your eyelids open so you can stay awake. He remembers growing up on the farm in Minnesota. He remembers being a trick pilot and walking out on the plane's wings. He remembers the people in St. Louis who paid for this plane. Sometimes he takes a sip of water from his canteen, and that's what he's doing in that picture. He also has 5 chicken sandwiches with him. That's all the food that he brought. But he eats nothing. It's easier to stay awake on an empty stomach. His body cries for sleep. He loses track of time. The night is endless. He wishes for the sun to rise. Dawn comes slowly, growing out of the gray mist. Will the fog never end, he wonders? The clouds change color from green to gray and from gray to red and gold. Lindbergh has been in the air for 23 hours. He is 2,300 miles from New York and has 1,300 miles to go. He feels completely alone in the world. He feels as if he were flying through all eternity. He tries to stay on course, but because of this constantly curving route, he is not always sure. Here and there, the clouds seem to break apart. He sees far below him the ocean. From high up, it's like a great blue shaft with gray walls. Then he flies into the clouds again, into the unchanging mist. So not only has he has to stay awake, he has to make sure that he's keeping on course. The day comes on brighter and warmer. Remember, it was night. Now it's the next day. Sometimes he imagines he sees land. Now it's only the flickering shapes of the clouds. And water, 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 endless water. It's 7:30 in the morning in New York, and Paris is over 1,000 miles away. There's no alternative but death and failure, he writes. Flying closer to the water, Lindbergh sights a porpoise leaping above the water. He spies a seagull, then fishing boats. Something quickens in Lindbergh's blood. He guides the spirit of St. Louis carefully down and down to just above a boat. He throttles the plane and calls out a question. Which way, he shouts, is Ireland? He hopes for a word. He longs for a wave, a warmer welcome back to fellowship of man. Then it's 10:52 in the morning, New York time. Lindbergh sees in the distance low mountains. Now he's awake with new hope. Land is near. He quickly unfolds a map across his knees. There he is with the map. He flies over the southern tip of Ireland. He is right on course. Cows graze on the green hills. People on horse-drawn carts look up and wave. He can land in Ireland, but he decides to go on because that's not where he wants to go. Where does he want to go? He could stop and land in Ireland, but where does he want to go? Right. The goal is to get to Paris, to go to France. It is 1:52 in the afternoon, New York time, as he crosses England. It is Lindbergh's 31st hour in the air. He crosses more water. The wide day is slowly ebbing towards twilight. When he sees land, the coast of France, children run out of their houses and they watch him fly by. He continues on. Then Lindbergh spies a glow ahead of him. Paris! I'm here! I'm here! Look, see? There's the Eiffel Tower. Can you guys see that? So he knows that he's in Paris. Huddled inside his tiny box house, folded in the dense hum of the airplane's engine, he loves his strange closeness to the clouds and sky. It's 4:52 in the afternoon, New York time, Lindbergh's 34th hour in the air. Can you imagine 34 hours in the air? And you have to stay awake, and there's nobody with you to talk to, and you have to make sure you stay on course and you're going the right way. From above, all Lindbergh sees are many, many small lights, but now he must concentrate on one thing, the sod coming up to meet me. Closer, closer, closer. The plane touches the ground. It bounces, rolls, hugs the solid earth. It's 10:22, Paris time. The flight has taken 33 and a half hours. 33 and a half hours he's been flying. Thousands of people are running towards the plane. For a moment, Lindbergh is dazed. It seems to him as if he were drowning in a great sea. People surround the plane, cheering, but Lindbergh could hardly hear them. His ears seem to have been deafened by the hours of the roaring engine. So while he's in the plane, the engine is super, super loud. And after all those hours of hearing the engine, he can't really hear too well. Crowds pull him out of the cockpit. Men and women are calling his name over and over. They carry him on their shoulders. See, there's all the people cheering him on. Others begin to tear pieces of the plane. More than anything else, Lindbergh wants to save the spirit of St. Louis. His first words are a question. Are there any mechanics here? But nobody speaks English. Finally, two French aviators arrive to help him. Policemen guard the plane. The aviators take Lindbergh away from the still cheering crowd. And everybody's cheering and they're raising him up. Because this was an amazing thing he did. He flew by himself all the way from New York to Paris. And in this time period, as he did this, the planes are not like they are today. This is taking place in the 1920s. This is a pretty big thing. In the airfield's hangar, he tells the story of his flight to the other pilots. The cramped cockpit, the aloneness, the long, long night, right? It's pretty small. The engine is really loud. He hasn't slept, right? He's really tired. He has nobody to talk to. He's all by himself. All over the world are beginning to blazon the news. American heroes safe in Paris. Lindbergh is driven off to the American embassy. He answers more questions about his flight. He has not slept in over 60 hours. Can you imagine that? Not sleeping in over 60 hours? Finally, at 4:15 in the morning, he goes to bed. When he wakes up, his life is changed forever. And there he is. When he wakes up, there'll be huge parades and medals and speeches. He'll be the most famous man in the world. And the year is 1927. It is 1927, and his name is Charles Lindbergh. So I hope you learned about Charles Lindbergh. And again, this is 1927. So this is really something that is very amazing that he did. So I hope you learned about Charles Lindbergh. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you saw that his resilience and his perseverance. And if you set a goal, you can accomplish it. Believe in yourself. Have a dream. If you have a dream, follow your dream. Believe in yourself. Follow your dreams. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you, everyone.